The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Pastor Baie, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Open line through till 1. The floor is yours, and you get there by calling 66 13 68. Text 166 177. WhatsApp 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. So you heard in the news, the four members of Ledgeco, Rob Mercer, Kirsty Morfitt, Gary Clewitt and Peter Reid, two serving MHKs didn't get returned, Bill Henderson and Kerry Sharp. So 3 new people in Ledgeco. Well done to them. Congratulations. Hope all goes well for them. No doubt we'll be speaking to them in the future. And recently, of course, you've heard them interviewed with Phil Gorm. Let's get to the lines first of all. Got lots and lots of questions to get through today. But first of all, on the lines, we got Robert with us now. Hi, Robert.
Hi, I'd like to talk about the insight into tourism and hospitality.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of adverts going out in... I'm not against this, by the way, I'm all for it, but there seems to be a lot of adverts going out in the Rupert Murdoch papers, and there seems to be amount of people that come along. Do you remember the old... was it Beach and Spades or whatever they call it? I can't remember what they call it now.
Bucket and Spade.
Yeah, that's it. And there seems to be a group of people, it's like 50, 60, 70, that take those buses all the time. How are they going to attract the younger people?
I don't know. How do you think?
I don't know. I imagine they're trying their best with mountain bike tours and things like that, but there's only so far they'll do that because they haven't got the infrastructure, have they?
Well, I don't want it to be stereotypical, but don't younger people really want to go for the Mediterranean sunshine and a good nightlife? And really, we haven't really got either.
I mean, we've got that bar down near the one that got the awards, near the, I can't remember what the church is called, where the Glasses place is on North Quay.
There are some isolated, we have got isolated, good places, but the trouble is, if you go to the Mediterranean or you go to, the Balearics or to the Canary Islands, that's right, there you go, you've got the sunshine all the time. So surely our market is not people who are searching for sunshine and a fantastic banging nightlife.
Well, let's just muse for a second about how we change that, because I think there's more of a market for people who want to make money, get into the finance sector and set themselves up temporarily. I think if you look at Santander Work Cafe and things like that, people just got over and said, well, instead of, I'll just give you a short story. In America, they have these things called digital nomads. Have you ever heard of them?
No, go ahead, yeah.
Well, digital nomads are basically people who set up companies and do like AI and things like that. Guys, hang on a second. Guys, shut up. Hang on, sorry, some people talking. Anyway, they set up digital nomads, so they have digital cafes, so they have things in the back. So they have jobs which they go down to the Canaries, not the Canaries, the Caribbean to do their work, like in Brazil and things like that. And I'm just thinking to myself, how do we attract those type of people to the Isle of Man? Because they're digital nomads, these people.
Oh, and personally, I haven't got a clue. But I mean...
we could do, though, couldn't we? If we got more places like the Santander Work Cafe things going up in Ramsey and things like that, couldn't we?
Well, in theory, yes, but it's a crowded market by the sound of it. And as you say, but we've got to find people who want to come to the Isle of Man, or lots of people. Let's face it, most people in Ireland and Scotland and in England and Wales have never ever been to the Isle of Man. I would say well over 90% of people have never been to the Isle of Man. When people come here, they tend to like it. But how do you get them? How do you get people here?
Well, I think the bucket and spade brigade is finished. So all I'm saying is it's more about people with computers and kind of like bringing across their laptops and things like that and setting up a job. That's what it's about. That's my point.
So you reckon the future? The future is more
enterprise, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there we are.
Enterprise.
Well, the fact is, though, Robert, somebody's got to do it. And it's all very well saying something must be done, but in the end, somebody's got to get their hand in their pocket and finance something.
We're on the national broadcaster at the moment, and people crossing Dublin will have tuned into this. I'm saying, why don't you? Why don't you do it? Why don't you come and set up a business here and things like that? Because it's all here for you. I remember I was on Facebook recently, and I was down at the British. I was looking across to where the boat was, and all these boats were going out with people on board. It's like, where are you going? It's all here. You know, it's all here for you. There's nothing to lose. You've got everything to gain if you set up a business here and do well, you know. That's my point.
Appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for calling today.
I may have an omelette today with that one because Ensign got out, but good luck.
All right, thanks for calling today. An omelette, not a pancake, huh? Scurrilous on Pancake Day. It's what are we, 13 minutes past 12. Interestingly, how do you get people to the Isle of Man? What would you do? I'm a digital nomad currently working from Timwell Mills car park, says SJ. Is there money in being a digital nomad? I don't know, maybe you can tell me.
No, I don't think
Tony,
so.
No money, Tony, in being a digital nomad.
Well, there is money, but not in the Isle of Man, I don't think. I think your money is in digital, but in gambling digital. I don't think digital nomads are really going to become a thing on the Isle of Man. You know, the man's just talking about, well, we need to attract more people. Well, how about attracting the older people who would appreciate what we have on the Isle of Man if we don't keep destroying it? The halfway tram stop, the prom that's not finished, the fact that we have to build a wall because the sea overcomes the wall. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But my issue today is not about tourism, because I don't think we're ready for tourists in any way, shape or form, because the DOI is being defended by its new chief completely erroneously. The DOI needs to be disbanded, and they all need to go and find another job somewhere, as far as I'm concerned. Their failure rate is colossal. Everything they've touched in the last 3 years has cost an arm and a leg and been a failure. And you can start with Liverpool docks and work your way forward. The prom, disastrous because it wasn't managed. The contract in Liverpool wasn't properly watched or looked at or read because they were too busy signing it. It just goes on. And this is not just the DOI. This is the chiefs within the DOI. And as it Chris Robertshaw yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 100% right. We have a problem with our departments. They are in charge. We need to forget about voting in for the people next time because they don't have any control. We need to take control back. And the only way you're going to get that is next election. And I urge everybody, please, go out and vote. But don't vote for the incumbents who are incompetent. Vote for somebody who wants to change things so that your voice is heard. Please do that. I mean, the Treasury Minister comes on and tells you, oh, yeah, I've reduced your tax. No, he hasn't. He increased it 2 years ago by 2%, and now he's dropped it to 1%. So he's increased the tax. And his solution to get rid of that money he lost, that 1%, I'll borrow it from something that's not mine. We need to have a tax system that is more equitable with the highly paid people sitting within the departments and the MHKs. My suggestion, everybody over 60,000 gross income per year is taxed at 6% additionally. And everybody over 80% or 80,000 is taxed at 8%. And everybody over 100 grand is taxed at 10%. And if they sat down and worked out how much that was, they'd find that would be substantial. It wouldn't be little, because we haven't been told how many people in government, in all the departments, are paid above certain thresholds. I guarantee they won't tell you. They'll tell you it's private. You're not allowed to know that. But I guarantee you there's lots of them. Guarantee that. And they keep increasing them. They keep adding all the time. So as Chris says, DOI prevaricated over this licence for Crogga, and they did it on purpose. And whatever Michelle Hayward says, she's out of a tree. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's saying you don't need the regulations. I'm afraid you do, because otherwise you can get sued. So number one, the department didn't do the regulations, because that's one thing that they can say, oh, well, you don't want your licence because we haven't got the regulations ready yet. Oh, it's too late now. So the department has won in the end. And it's not a case of I'm against green energy. I'm against being controlled by people who are not elected, who are hired by somebody or other with shall we say, a pre-known agenda or a preemptive agenda. So we are going to face in the future, next year, there'll be an election. If we get this lot back in, you can guarantee your electricity prices are going to go through the roof. They will put windmills up that won't turn all the time, and you will not have any windfall from any gas developments, because we don't want gas developments. As per Michelle Hayward, I don't want any gas developments, and I don't care what the rest of you think, because they never asked anybody.
Well, what we tried to do is find a way through this and just say, much came out yesterday, and as Mr. Robert Shaw said, the licensee, never said anything all the way along, because that wouldn't be proper for them to complain. The licensee won't complain against the licensor, and afterwards. But you see, we never really know. As the public, we don't know. The thing is, there may not have been any usable gas there. We don't know. It may have been a fool's errand. We don't know. But the fact is, on the one side, you've got people...
Let me interrupt. BP did a drill stem test. That means a temporary completion of a well. So they do know there's gas there. What they don't know is, will it flow for 25 years or will it flow for 5? That's the issue. And commercially, can I afford to put a platform in place and produce that gas and put it into a pipeline and get it to a market? That's the issue. It's not whether there's gas there is. It's whether it's commercial at the present time. When BP were doing it, it wasn't commercial according to BP, and BP's thresholds are quite high for commerciality. So if it's not going to make a lot of money, we'll just leave it. But the issue for me is, we've just ignored it. We've pushed it to one side consistently.
And I think this is what the public wants to know, really, is it a national asset they're waiting to be exploited, or is it not? Much the same as if we suddenly struck gold in the old Foxdale mines, would we drill for that or wouldn't we? If it is a national asset, are we going to go for it? Is it worth going for it in the long run? And of course, remember, politics has come into all this now. So suddenly, that wouldn't have happened 30 years ago. The politics wouldn't have been here nor there.
Yeah, but you come back to the same thing again and again and again. This is not government money. Government keeps chipping in, well, we want this developed sensibly. But it's not them developing it. They're not paying the money out to get it developed. All they're doing is harvesting some profit. So what is their problem? And the problem is, they don't like gas. They don't like anything that's not a windmill or electricity. And that's across the government and across all the departments.
But that is the stated aim, Tony. The stated aim is to go to net zero.
Yes, but Les, Andy, how do you get to net zero? Do we know what that is? The answer is, you have to buy, at some stage you will have to buy certificates from somebody who says, I've got a forest in Afghanistan that is regulated as net zero. Or you give Elon Musk a load of money because he's producing electric batteries. The point is, you've got to buy carbon credits. That's not something we will have to think about. It's something we'll have to do. In the future, you're going to have to buy carbon credits if you want net zero. This word net zero doesn't give an honest picture of what it means. I'll tell you what, you could go back and listen to David Ashford. I asked him 2 years ago, I think. This is all going to cost a lot of money, isn't it, David? And he was on your programme, and he was in the Treasury, and he had a Treasury person with him. And he said, yes, this has all got to be paid for somehow. The only person in government that said, oh, yeah, there's going to be a cost. And the cost will be in excess of putting up the windmills and all the rest of it, because that's the only way to get to the word net zero. And it's just smoke and mirrors, because you're buying a piece of paper off of somebody who says, I'll issue this, and this is not controlled. It's not regulated in any way, shape or form. Elon Musk issues regularly carbon credit certificates, which he makes money out of. So the end result is that you're paying other people for doing the job that you want to do. That's what it comes down to. And the government is very clear, we're not going to drill for gas. They've already said that. So they've closed that door. So unless we change the government and change the way that people think, you're not going to be able to, in the future, take any asset that is not approved by the department. Think about it.
The other thing to consider, Tony, is that with the best will in the world, you and I won't be around to either pay the bills or harvest the benefits of this.
Absolutely not. But on the other hand, I would hate to think that we're just going to go blindly down this road and basically make the Isle of Man a negative nation, in the sense that we've got no money left, because that's where they're heading. They keep borrowing from funds that they're not theirs, and basically that fund there is to pay for the pensions of people. So there'll be a situation where we run out of money. And Treasury, Dr. Allenson should hang his head in shame. He's done nothing about equalising the tax situation in the Isle of Man. He hasn't taxed anybody who's higher paid at all. The only ones who get taxed are the ones who are over millions, because they get a fixed rate. But we don't go after any of the ones in the lower grades, which means most of the politicians and, of course, most of the people in the upper echelons of the departments. I mean, we are on a hide into nothing here, because they're running around in circles using their own ideas that this is the government, this is our wonderful MHKs. I'll put forward my own idea about this, that and the other, and we spend all our time talking about that. But they're not resolving the core issues. Where's the money coming from for all these things they're going to do?
Okay. All right, Tony.
Anyway, Andy, I'm sorry. The boat won't be sailing when there's high tides or low tides. So, again, wrong boat, wrong people. Good luck.
Well, they reckon yesterday it was down to barometric pressure. Apparently, the tide was 20 centimetres lower because it was barometric pressure.
And could it be anything to do with the fact that they have bought a bigger boat? Because I don't ever remember having problems like this with the Ben McCree. Bought a bigger boat, which is twice the gross tonnage of the Ben McCree. So they bought a bigger boat and then spent a fortune on trying to make it fit. But it basically is just too big, because if you think about it, the Ben McCree under the hull, the width of it is half, almost, of the Manxman. So your suction effect is much higher, because you've got all boats are flat bottomed, or invariably, except for warships. They're the only ones that aren't really flat bottomed. But most vessels, if you get them up in a dry dock, you can walk around underneath and they're flat, like a barge. So the consequence is, the bigger the flat area, the higher the suction drag. But they should have thought of that before they bought a bigger boat, shouldn't they?
All right. Tony,
they didn't, sorry.
We appreciate it. Thanks for calling today.
You take care, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Thank you, Tony. Text, email, call on WhatsApp, and loads of messages to get through, including... there are many negative points of green energy, i.e. wind farms, but let's put things in perspective. There is no price on our children's future safeguard. Our children's future install the wind farm, says Big John in Ramsey. And that's my point. I don't want to be morbid about this, but I'll be long gone by the time all this happens. You may be long gone by the time all this happens. We don't know, and that's part of it. We don't quite know how all this is going to work out because we've never been through it before. Now, you could say, when the original Industrial Revolution happened, it put a lot of people's nose out of joint. When the spinning jenny and all when the Luddites were doing their stuff, a lot of people were very upset about that industrial revolution. This is possibly a green industrial revolution. Now, John said, never mind wasting money on the scoreboards for the TT that are no longer necessary. The money's going to be better spent on the TT access road, as that isn't fit for purpose. The TT access road should be widened, resurfaced and lengthened so it comes out by the roundabout at Ballafletcher Road, thus not having to go through the housing estate. Vicarage View. It's a joke having the main hospital cut off for 4 weeks every year without any proper access for buses. They've had to cancel procedures for this. If you've got any thoughts on this, not long away, by the way, 11 weeks next Monday. TT starts, going to be qualifying Monday 26th of May. Race days Saturday 31st, Sunday 1st, Tuesday 3rd, Wednesday 4th, Friday 6th is senior race day, and Saturday 7th. Any thoughts on that, on the TT access road? A message. Tony's full of ideas and views. Why doesn't he put his mouth in Tynwald and stand as an MHK next year? Well, I'll be honest with you. I've got immense respect for anybody who puts themselves forward for a public vote. It takes an awful lot to do that. Not all of us can do it. There are many reasons that people stand for office and many reasons that some people don't stand for office. Will you be looking at it? It's not that far away. Thursday, 24th of September next year, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Election 2026. Talking of government waste, says WhatsApper 566, what happened to government smart meters? How many have been installed and how much has it been cost? Is it working for you? Well, if you're using a smart meter at the moment, tell us about it. Is it happening? Is it saving you money? Are you entertained by it? Chris Robertshaw's on today. Hi, Chris. I haven't seen you for ages.
Andy, my apologies for coming on at all. I'm reticent. I really shouldn't do it because you were very kind in allowing me on yesterday, but so taken aback by what happened in the Keys this morning. And if I may, I'll just go quickly as I can through the points of inaccuracy on the part of the minister. She did her best to create a false reality around her answers. I think there were about 12 or 13 related to Crogga. But when she was asked by one honourable member why the regs were not in place after 6.5 years, her reply was, if it wasn't so serious, you would just laugh, wouldn't you? She said, my department is working at pace. I mean, here we are 6.5 years later and they still haven't done it. But the important point is this. She then later went on to say that there wouldn't be a timing problem currently if Crogga had by now got to the point of production. So she was blaming everything on Crogga for not having got to where it originally thought it would get to by now, blamed it on Crogga, and yet at the same time has done nothing to produce the regulations. And Crogga cannot act without the regulations. I mean, quite honestly, Andy, her department is now, and she is now, seriously floundering. I want to go on to the second point, 3D seismic. She keeps going on and on about Crogga should have done the 3D seismic test by now. They could have done it in 2019. Now, that clearly indicates she doesn't understand how the offshore commercial world works. You cannot enter into a process of a 3D seismic test, which in current price is something between 12 and 15 million. You can't enter that as a company. You can't enter that door doing a 3D seismic test until you can see an exit door saying, okay, now you can proceed to appraisal well and production. You cannot spend 10 or 12 million pounds just on the off chance that the department that's supposed to produce the regulations do so, when in fact they failed to do so over 6.5 years. My third point, and finally, and then I'll get off the phone, is compensation. Now, she said certain things about the compensation. You remember yesterday we were discussing the fact that Crogga could only go forward with regard to compensation on the basis of best practice. Yeah. Now, I actually have been supportive of the efforts of Crogga from 2018, right from the beginning when Dickin was involved. And my recollection at that time was that the Isle of Man government was going to enter into best practice, and i.e. that's in conjunction with the UK Crown Estates and the North Sea Transitionary Authority. And yet now and recently they've been saying, no, Crogga must agree to a compensation process which is totally controlled by Ofsted in terms of timing, amount and everything, and whether it happens or not. So despite the fact that one member this morning asked Michelle Haywood, the Minister, with regard to our conversation yesterday, and was it the case that there were these three roadblocks in place, she said categorically not. Well, that isn't true, and she's clearly indicating that she's out of the depth, her department's out of the depth, and really they've got to up their game massively, otherwise the embarrassment for the department is going to be enormous. Andy, thanks for giving me the time this morning. I'll step aside.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for your opinions today. We are always like to hear every opinion around the table today. Liz is on now. Hi, Liz.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hi, Liz.
Hope you're well.
Good, fine. What's on your mind?
Well, I have two things, actually. One is Reayrt Baie, by Albert Terrace, has closed down.
Yes.
And it's presently empty. I'm just thinking, I don't see why the hospital can't use it. There's a lot of people in hospital and have nowhere to go, so why can't they use that building to put the people in there, sooner than having wards, beds taken up in hospital?
It sounds simple if you say it quick, Liz. I'm sure they've got a reason not to.
I know, they always put obstacles up, don't they, really? And just a quick thing, on about the power, and all that. Well, that river that runs down the side of Tesco's and right down into the sea?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you walk by it, you see the amount of power that's in that river. It's got several drops, and I don't see why they can't harness that power for electric. It's tidal power, isn't it? Wherever power.
It is,
power.
yeah. I mean, there's sometimes it does run a bit. It runs a bit low sometimes, doesn't it?
Well, not very often. So it isn't. It's constantly going down 24/7. And that's a really good source of energy, so it is. It's been wasted. And you wouldn't have to stick a windmill on it, and you wouldn't have to stick a drill on it neither.
Oh, I see. Sorry, you're talking about the bit that's just by Lake Road, that's just by the bridge there. That yes, of course, that's tidal there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, all the way down, actually, from sort of like where E.B. Christians used to be.
Yeah.
When you're down the far side of that bridge, there's loads of drops. There's several drops going down. And yes, like you say, further down, it is really, 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 really strong. So it is, and really flows very heavy. I thought it would be ideal. I don't know how they would harness something. I mean, the windmills they could put a thing around, so put a windmill around paddle steamers, that could go around, and something they could do like that.
A big water wheel. Well, we specialise on those in the Isle of Man. We've got the biggest one in the world in Laxey.
It doesn't not even going, is it?
Okay. All right, Liz, thanks for calling today.
Okay, bye.
Good to hear from you. Castletown commissioners met recently and discussed fly tipping due to the charges at the Southern Civic Amenity site. I don't know whether this has affected you in the south of the Isle of Man, but have you spotted any fly tipping recently since these new charges came in at the amenity sites, that what we used to call tips? Have you got an opinion on that? Text, email, call or WhatsApp. Howard's on now. Hi, Howard.
Hi, Andy. Now, just listen to Tony. Tony's quite right in what he says about the flat-bottom boats. You may have heard where they sometimes use that, how can I say, suction on the bottom of the boat when they're sailing, etc., to pull the boat down. Now, this is when they say they're getting launched in Holland or places to go under a certain bridge. They use the suction on that, but that's only by your leave. What I was looking to, because of the mud, etc., they got stuck in, people are going to say all sorts of things, but where is the Tarawushti? Because I looked on your webcams yesterday, and she was in Ramsey Harbour. She's not there now. I've looked this morning, and on Vessel Finder, it shows her off Mackerel Head, but that was 5 days ago. So why are the Harbour Board, or well, they call them DOI now, Department of, I won't say it. Why isn't the Tarawushti in there working? They used to have a dredger. They sold it.
I remember, didn't they have 2 dredgers at one time? They used to beach them put them on the beach at one time.
I don't remember beaching them. I can remember the old Mannin 1 and Mannin 2. Yeah. Mannin 1 was the steam dredger. She was sold, and she ended up in Elderslie Port, actually, for preservation, but unfortunately she sunk. And is no longer in being. Mannin 2, she was a diesel, and she worked down in all the harbours around the island, keeping them clear. But you'll see this yourself, and with all the rain that we've had all through this winter, the river coming down through has been brown, right the way down into the harbours, and going out to sea. You can see it in the bay, going across the bay, and the sediment that's in that must be settling in the harbour, and where they blasted at the harbour entrance, what they call the Conster Flakes, when they put the Princess Alexander breakwater there, they blasted all that and cleared that out to give extra depth. Now, sediment going out through there is going to settle in that channel that they took out, and eventually it's going to become obstructed. But why are the DOI not in the harbour with the Tarawushti, keeping this silt on the move to let it go out? They're quick enough to condemn Peel ports for Hisham. They come up on the high horse with that, and they're guilty of the same crime themselves of neglect. And they'll put it down to high pressure, low tides, big boats, but nothing to do with the idiots in the DOI.
You just wonder, did anybody consider that this might happen? I mean, did anybody actually, do a risk assessment on this and just think that this might happen in the future and take a file out off the shelf and just say, well, this is what we do now? Because at the moment we seem to be at the mercy of the tides and the weather.
Well, there has been times in the past where we've had low tides, but it's not been anything like what we've got today. Admittedly, she's a bigger vessel, much bigger vessel, and she wants a little bit of extra water underneath it. I think she's half a metre shallower in draft than what the Ben McCree is. But that same token, when you load that, it's carrying far more weight. So it's going to go down further. And this is where your problem. And I can't recall, it may well have done in the past, but I can't recall in my lifetime any of the Manx vessels, as we call them, getting stuck in the mud in Douglas Harbour. That is purely and simply down to cost-cutting and penny pinching within the DOI. And I've got a classic one now, I've just found out this week, but I won't mention on the radio at the moment, and it may surprise you, the DOI involvement. Okay. And this is where they should be ashamed of themselves, that they're holding up the island lifeline, and that's what it is. We can get by without the airport, it's inconvenient, but you can't get by without food and various other aspects of it.
Okay, all right. Good to hear from you. Thanks for that, Howard.
Take care. Bye now.
Okay, got a message in from Ronnie who just said, remember, Andy, gross tonnage is a measure of volume, not weight. Heading me off at the pass there. And Steve, 806, says, opinions are obviously welcome and everybody's entitled to them, but opinions of a shareholder in a business are obviously inherently biased. And repeatedly broadcasting these grievances without the conflict of interest is clearly declared every time is inappropriate. Well, I think we've mentioned it time and time again, Steve, the fact that Chris Robershaw is a shareholder of Crogga. I mean, saying it every time, would you forget it? He's a shareholder. but he's also a former MHK and a former Minister of Policy and Reform, i.e. reforming the government, and this is part of it. But we appreciate your point, and of course every opinion, it's worth restating now, of course, Mannin Line is not a documentary. It's an opinion programme, and these are opinions, and we air a wide range of opinions. Some you may completely agree with, others you may think are utter tosh. But that's Mannin Line. And if we get as many opinions as possible, then we can each make our own opinion up. Wind turbines kill at least 18 birds each per year, says 223, dropping me a note for that. That fella from Ramsey makes a lot of good points, says Peter. Which one? There are lots of them. The Crogga gas field is just the same as the horse tramway. The DOI didn't want it, and that's tough luck. We move on. The DOI is powerful, but it needs stripping apart, says Will. Well, it's a constituted government department. I mean, that's your opinion. We have to work with what we work with, and remember, the government's stated aim is net zero. The government also has a plan to bring more people into the population. We have to work with what we can't change policy from day to day. We have to work with what we've got and the politicians that we have. Anyway, Chris was talking about what Michelle Haywood said today. This is the infrastructure minister, who says the government didn't miss a golden opportunity after Crogga's licence to explore gas expired. The two parties couldn't reach an agreement, she said, on the terms of the renewal of the licence to carry out a 3D seismic survey. This is Michelle Haywood from Keys. Today she was responding to an urgent question. Michelle Haywood.
Have we missed a golden opportunity? Government itself hasn't missed a golden opportunity. Government issued a licence to a company, a private company, that wanted to go and see if there was anything there that was worth exploiting. Is it a golden opportunity? I genuinely don't know, because without that 3D seismic data, none of the industry experts will guarantee to you that there is anything there at all. There may well be, and there may be nothing. And even if there is, there may be no flow from it that would be commercially exploitable. So actually, I think it is not the fault of government. Government has bent over backwards and issued extension after extension to allow Crogga to get on with the job. And I actually wish they had done. I genuinely wish they'd got on with it, and they'd showed us what was there, shared their data, and we'd have been able to know, because forever now there will be a question hanging over us about what was there. That will allow honourable members and others outside of this place to carry on charging that the government wasted some golden opportunity, when actually in reality none of us know for definite, and we will never know at this juncture unless somebody steps forward and funds those studies. Would I commit taxpayers' money to doing it? No, because on the data I've seen so far, I'm not convinced that the chances are very good, and it's not our job to gamble with taxpayers' money. Yeah. Crogga indeed did suggest very recently to government that we should underwrite their costs of the work done so far plus the seismic survey, balanced against whether we would deliver legislation in time. The value of that underwrite was £15 million. Now, I don't have £15 million sat sloshing around in my department. I wish I did. And as the honourable member will know, I don't think there's any ministers that would stand up and commit £15 million to a private company for doing something that is exploratory, it is a prospecting endeavour, and has no guarantee of any successful return. And so that was felt something that neither my department nor Treasury nor Comyn were supporting.
That's the Minister talking this morning. Incidentally, there's a note out for expressions of interest for an offshore regulatory service, brackets hydrocarbons, close brackets, out recently. The Isle of Man government seeking engagement with a private company or suitably qualified government department to fulfil a role similar to that provided by the North Sea Transition Authority, the NSTA, and the Offshore Petroleum Regulator for Environment and Decommissioning, and the Health and Safety Executive in the UK for overseeing the drilling of an offshore exploration gas well under a Seaward Production Innovate licence. So the government seeking engagement with a private company or suitably qualified government department for overseeing the drilling of an offshore exploration gas well under a seaward. Now, this may be nothing to do with what's been happening, but I've been sent this. Expressions of interest may be submitted through a portal. It's the procurement portal, the government's procurement portal, by a week on Friday, the 14th of March 2025. The successful applicant will play a critical role in managing the island's potential energy resources, ensuring the safe, efficient and environmentally responsible extraction of hydrocarbons. The Isle of Man government's inviting qualified private companies or government departments to take on this pivotal role for the Isle of Man, overseeing the drilling of a well in the Irish Sea. The successful candidate will be supported by the legislator, being granted statutory powers for the period up to, during drilling, testing and through the suspension or plug and abandonment activity. That's at the Isle of Man government's procurement portal. You have until a week on Friday to apply.
We're cooking with sunshine, cholera. We're washing with sunshine, cholera. We're heating with sunshine, cholera. The future looks good.
With solar panels, battery storage and domestic wind turbines from Reayrt Electrical, you can slash your electricity bills and recoup your investment in as little as 7 years. Call now to find out more.
676 544. Future looks good.
Get your garden ready for spring with Riley's. Seed potatoes to garden machinery. Get down to Cool Road, Braddon for everything you need. And all your pet supplies and birdseed too. Leap into spring with Riley's Garden Centre.
Instead of moving your rubbish from A to B, take it to C. Castaigne Scrap Metal. The only name you need when it comes to scrap on the Isle of Man. Bring your scrap metal down to us at Foxhill Road and we'll help you unload it, taking away the eyesore and instantly tidying up your home, business or workplace. Think Castaigne Scrap Metal. The only name you need when it comes to scrap. Castaigne Scrap Metal. Call 801 337.
Quadlock is the strongest and most secure mounting system in the world for integrating your phone, camera or accessories into your outdoor pursuits and for your car, van or motorhome. See the Quadlock display at H&H Motorcycles in South Key, Douglas.
On tomorrow's Spotlight, we get Shakespearean as we speak to a couple of Shakespeare practitioners helping out in this summer's outdoor promenade performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And a classic book on Manx history gets a refresher. We talk to the author. Spotlight, crafted by those creative lovelies at the Isle of Man Arts Council and presented by me, H, tomorrow evening just after 5:30 and available as a podcast straight after broadcast via the Manx Radio website or, of course, your favourite podcast provider. Spotlight, art in the making. The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
11 minutes now before 1, and thank you to, Rich. Hi, Rich. Is the free TV licence for over 75 still happening? Yes, it is. Government made the decision back end of last year to extend the provision of free TV licences for residents aged 75 or over to the end of next year, the end of 2026. The age-related TV licence free concession number 2 scheme to 2020, which was set to expire at the end of last year, 31st of December, is now in place for 2 more years. So it's on till the end of 2026. Free TV licences for over 75s. And I want to thank also to Amy, who sent me a thing all about cash, which I'll come to in a minute, and carrying cash. And Juan's with us now. Hi, Juan.
Andy, how are you today?
Very well, thanks.
Good. I was just listening to Robert before. I think what we need for the island to bring people here is an omelette cafe.
A specialist omelette cafe. People have pancake cafes, don't they? There was a chain that
Absolutely,
did pancakes.
We could have a cannabis omelette cafe. There we go. That'll bring people here, won't it? Listening to what's been going on with Chris was saying yesterday, quite sobering with his thoughts, and obviously with an interest from inside being politically motivated before. So it's nice to hear people on. Very surprised though. Alex was on Thursday and Bonzo. That's Betty that's made me do that, not Bongo. Bonzo said he was going to come on and challenge him, but I didn't hear him on. So it's quite interesting that, I think within an hour he was on the political pages condemning Chris Robertshaw, but he couldn't come on and sword fence face to face with him.
Well, the fact is, through all this, Stuart, is, and I don't know how many times we have to restate this, Mannin Line's been going for 50 years. It's an opinion programme. It's an opinion programme. This is not a definitive documentary. People come on and state their opinions. They may state facts, but you're perfect. Everybody's perfectly at liberty to disagree. So,
well, absolutely. And I was looking forward to the sword fencing, but it didn't happen. So, on to the factual stuff, though. I mean, Michelle Hayward has made some comments, and she was actually interviewed by Alex on your programme the other morning. Now, there was a couple of points there. I mean, she made out a point of this wouldn't have happened if Crogga had signed into certain things and done stuff. And she quoted 2019, 2020 as being a time when they should have been signing into that. Wasn't that a period when the whole world was in turmoil and locked down? So would that have been in someone's mind at the time of doing that? I'm just looking at devil's advocate here. That was a very interesting time in everyone's life, and that time was the specific time that she said that these things should have been done. So I put that out there as one defence for Crogga. The other defence people are saying is that Crogga had no money and not a legitimate company. But on saying that as well, is that not why people go to banks or investors? Because they have an idea for making a fantastic business, but they haven't got all the funding to go with it. So surely that's commonplace to go out looking for private investment if you've hit on something.
Well, that's the point, which leads me to Derek dropped a note in to me and just said, I'm getting sick and tired of government saying that they're going to solve everything. Business solves everything. The government doesn't.
Business solves everything.
The government can enable business, but business, enterprise, free enterprise will solve all the problems.
And this is the problem where we are now, and like Tony said before, he's quite right with a lot of stuff. Government is overstepping its mark. Government is there to serve the people. Government is there to make things work, and not to procrastinate and put things in the way. Now, Chris mentioned about hurdles being put in the way. Now, if you're going to do athletics, eventually if the hurdles are too high, you're not going to win the race. So my suggestion is you've got a government who is totally on board with a net zero agenda. They've made that quite clear. In fact, Michelle Hayward made that quite clear. So you're up against straight away a government who has no interest in doing this. They have obviously let the license go because they don't want to be seen to not do anything. But if you've got a government there with an agenda of net zero and not to drill, then what are you up against to start with? It's an uphill struggle to start with. And also, Chris was saying about the DOI, and damningly about DOI, which has come out about a lot of things. But I wonder about the AG's involvement in this, and who sets out the paperwork. It's certainly not Michelle Hayward that's doing this. I mean, she's the name at the front. But the AG's office must have a big part to play in writing up all this here documentation. And like I've said before, the AG's office is a mass with people at the moment. Quite a few siblings in there of different people as well. But the AG's office has got to take a part in this. So where is the direction coming from? Is it coming, again, we've said, is it coming from the politician? Is it coming from the civil servants and then put through a willing politician to take this forward and then onto the AG's office? So where's the state of play on that one, do you think, Andy?
Well, we don't know at the moment, do we? We only... and the fact is, remember, you do need a functioning civil service. You have to have civil servants who put legislation together and, staff departments and what have you. So you have to have that. And, we're not knocking the civil service. We're just trying to find out where this is going. And at the back of it all, the government's stated aim is to go to net zero. So that's a political decision. It's public policy to go for net zero. And until anything changes, the government is perfectly within its brief to actually go for net zero. Okay, got to go now, Stuart.
Cheers, Andy.
Thanks for calling today. Good to hear from you. That's it for Mannin Line today. Well, just a quick word about Ramsey commissioners are asking people not to fly tip. So Castletown commissioners asking people not to fly tip. But of course, since the closure of the northern civic community site, which closes on the 31st of March and will be then handed back to the Department of Infrastructure, they get their hands on the northern civic community side. So, if there is any fly tipping around Castletown or the north, then we'd like to hear about it if possible. Wolfie dropped me a note and just said, we've got one of the most qualified people in this field to drill, who works all over the world, is currently working in Australia. If the government knew what talent there is already on the Isle of Man, many of whom would give their advice freely if asked. By the way, apparently the government's looking for a new scoreboard on the Skeet. That's it. Thanks to Chris on the phones. Have a great day.
WINT